Modern westerns make their mark not by mastering the genre, as many film buffs already cite Leone's spaghetti westerns or the Wayne and Ford projects as being those that mastered the western, but instead by crafting unique takes on the genre that help build the American film industry. By subverting genre conventions, conveying the real world through the absurdity of the genre, or by introducing characters that no one could have expected, films such as Unforgiven, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and Django Unchained all help to revitalize the genre and bring a fresh take to a long-standing and traditional format. Unforgiven, winner of the 1993 Academy Award for Best Picture, tells the story of William Money, a former outlaw who has put down his revolver in order to care for his family and honor his dead wife's wishes for him to be an honorable man. We then follow him as he learns of a bounty placed on a man who cut up a prostitute from the self-proclaimed Schofield Kid. He decides to take the job one last time in order to set his kids up for the future. Throughout the film, we follow his journey from an unhappy farmer to outlaw once more. From the opening title crawl on, the audience is aware that Money is a man of a certain moral ambiguity. Eastwood, who directs and stars in the film, is able to masterfully play on genre conventions and the audience's expectations in order to create a special project. It's a strange reverse from the formulaic westerns of the 40s and 50s, where it was white hats versus black hats, good versus evil, sheriff versus outlaw, as Little Bill is a terrible man who uses all sorts of violence to get what he wants. This is seconded as he throws around some of the women and later beats up English Bob to a pulp for nothing but having a pistol. He is even introduced dressed in black, quite contrary to the usual white hat sheriffs that were so prevalent in old westerns, while the outlaw Money acts as our protagonist in the film, flipping the genre convention on its head. Money is the closest thing to a good man, or one that is at least trying to be good, in the entire film. This highlights the story's moral ambiguity. He says his goal is to give his children a good start, yet his high and mighty goals are often forgotten because of his undoubtedly evil actions, lays with the audience's emotions. We are curious to see what Money would be like if he were to snap and go back to his old ways. Therefore, we root for him to revert back and break his promise. However, as moral people, the audience, we also don't want him to dishonor his dead wife. In turn, as an audience, we struggle along with him. This conflict between our desire to see him break and see him honor his wife is carried throughout the film through the symbol of whiskey used to represent temptations. The film is further separated from old guard westerns through things like constant rain or mud in the town. Everyone is so dirty, which is different from the old studio westerns that had to be perfect, and was true because of the props that they used. Even further, this story is set in a time where the days of the outlaws are long gone. As we are introduced to the Schofield Kid, a nickname given to himself, it's obvious that the remaining outlaws are practically playing dress-up. Even the only real bounty hunter that we see, English Bob, is more of a gimmick now than a real outlaw. As an audience, we don't know what to expect from Money, and that's what makes him such a special character. Throughout most of the film, in moments when it seems like he will stand up, he falls. A good example of this is when him, Ned, and the Schofield Kid ride into town to meet the girls who have posted the bounty. Money is confronted by Little Bill in the bar. When we think he's about to stand up, he falls and is beaten up by Little Bill. Later, when we think he's finally staying true to his promise, he reverts back to his outlaw ways. Further, as an audience, our expectations are constantly being subverted by the story. The sheriff is our antagonist, and the audience is supposed to feel guilty as Money kills the bounty, rather than triumph. And later, Ned is killed after we believe he is safe. These tools help to keep an all too familiar genre fresh and interesting, leading us to the conclusion and ultimate self-discovery by Money. All these expectations, to complete the bounty, to take care of his kids, save Ned, and so on, weigh on Money and funnel him into an ultimate moment of character development. Money had been a good man for his wife, and what did that get her? Death. The same as everyone else. He realized this after his close encounter with death, fighting with Little Bill, as he says, "I saw death, the angel of death. He had snake eyes." This leads him to his conclusion. People don't get what they deserve, and life isn't about right or wrong. When the lines are often so blurred, as we see in this very film, no matter how good a man he had become, he will remain unforgiven. Death still comes for him with the same fury. For this, he decides to avenge Ned with the same aggression and violence that he had in his previous life. When he finally decides to do this, he strikes fear in his enemy's eyes. This new Money, free from guilt, is scary. This ultimate revelation gives the audience the final lesson of the film. The world is not divided into good and evil, white hats and sheriffs, black hats and outlaws. Sometimes it's just not that clear.
I don't deserve this. To die like this. I was building a house. Deserves got nothing to do with it. I'll see you in hell, William Money. Yeah.
Westerns are a bit like zombie movies, in that they are timeless, yet overdone. Each genre has gone through its golden age for vitalist movements and now rests somewhere in a limbo, waiting for some magical film to break it out from the cycle of reboot, rehash, and reach for something more that will likely draw out another, presumably short-lived, genre resurgence. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is certainly not that movie, trying to find that special something, and I can say with confidence that its choice not to be that film that tries to revive the genre or be a copycat of the previous successes is exactly why it's so good, as it poses the question, in a film where absurdity rules all, is it a fictional portrait of the West or a mirror image of the real world? The film opens with the most whimsical of all the 6 vignettes, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which also serves as the film's namesake, which plays more like a Looney Tunes short than a Coen Brothers piece. Its use of musical numbers, prop comedy, and classic Western cinematography, as well as smart dialogue mixed with elements of gore, create the strange mix of humor and gut-wrenching violence that we are used to seeing in Coen Brothers films. The performance by Tim Blake Nelson, playing Buster Scruggs, who had previously worked with the directing duo in their classic Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, serves to highlight this juxtaposition as he plays the character almost as if he's a child playing cowboys in the backyard, only this time, it's not exactly harmless fun. His ability to turn back and forth from a fun-loving cowboy into a merciless killer with a wide smile and deep, emotionless eyes in a single instant is amazing. You'll find yourself asking whether he's a good man or a bad man, and I figure this is the point. By the end of the vignette, Buster's been brutally shot in the head while flipping his shiny silver 6-shooter into its holster. When it's all said and done, we've been through 2 musical numbers, 3 shootouts, and 3 violent deaths. All of this done with Buster's big, wide smile that serves to remind audiences that the West was way more violent and terrible than we remember, or Buster would care to admit. The Coen brothers have always used death as a tool in their stories. Murder drove films like the unforgettable Fargo or Miller's Crossing, but it has never been so intertwined with elements of comedy found in their other works like Hail Caesar or Raising Arizona. Many of the other vignettes follow a similar structure to the first. Character introductions, then a central conflict, usually centering on a man versus man conflict, and finally, a conclusion, usually in stark contrast from the story that it follows. While the film itself is definitely more than the sum of its parts, the vignettes All Gold Canyon and Meal Ticket are definitely the highlights. One, a story of triumph, and the other, a story of terrible loss. All Gold Canyon centers on the film's only true man versus nature story that is so well told in a setting like the wide-open frontiers of the West. We follow an unnamed gold prospector who arrives at the stunning canyon and begins to sift for gold in its winding stream. As he struggles up the ravine, digging up dirt, searching for the elusive pocket of gold, we learn to empathize with him through some masterful writing by the Coens. In one simple scene where the prospector decides to swipe some hawk eggs for dinner, yet chooses to return them, save one for himself out of necessity, after being spotted by an owl, we can respect and empathize with the prospector who seems to have placed a value on the world where the vast majority choose to throw away the lives of others without a blink of an eye or the falling of a wide smile. This makes his eventual victory, a rare occurrence in this fantasized Old West, all the more rewarding.
Hello, Mr. Pocket.
The second notable vignette, Meal Ticket, is the story of a traveling, unnamed duo. One, a quadriplegic thespian performer, played by Henry Melling, and the other, his caretaker, played by Liam Neeson. The story follows their struggle to make a living performing their act. Throughout the story, we see Neeson take care of the young performer throughout their travels, feeding him and helping him through some of the usually more private aspects of life, like getting dressed or using the restroom. While that sounds a bit crude, it really does effectively make the audience invest in their relationship. Yet, this partnership obviously cannot last in the harsh West in which our tales have been set. As the prophets begin to disappear and the citizens of the small, desolate towns in which they visit become more and more enthralled by the amazing new act across town, which happens to be a chicken with the ability to do math, Neeson grows tired of the routine and decides to buy the supposedly magic chicken. This leads to Neeson's character killing our unnamed performer in favor of his new moneymaker, revealing that in reality, he was only using him as a lowly piece of capital, giving depth to the seemingly plain choice to keep the performer unnamed. The seemingly constant dark endings of these stories, Meal Ticket especially, and the ever-present threat of death, paired with the characters that feel so grounded in our own world, create a conflict in the mind of the audience. The film's mix of almost half comedy and half drama, each driven by death and violence, drives the audience towards some real reflection. In today's world, does the death we see on screen unfolding in these stories play better as an absurdist comedy? Or is it possible that it is closer to our own reality than we would care to admit? By throwing the narrative rulebook out the window through the random killing of a protagonist or the sudden breakout of a musical number, the film seems absurd while actually drifting closer and closer to the incomprehensible randomness that will always rule over our real world. It's possible that something this ridiculous is actually as accurate as it comes. Suspension of disbelief is an essential part of all filmmaking. All of the film's plot points and dramatic tension rely on an audience believing what they are seeing on screen. In Django, the director, Quentin Tarantino, is able to masterfully ride this line, with ultra-violent visuals and over-the-top characters existing alongside a dramatic and darkly comedic story about slavery. The film wears its blaxploitation and grindhouse influences on its sleeve. It does this through the ability to look cheap through the use of old-school practical effects, but stays realistic because of its narrative and amazing performances from DiCaprio, Jamie Foxx, and Sam Jackson alike. This film also diverges from other westerns in the fact that it's a film that is definitely controversial. Westerns were traditionally the studio's way of making a surefire hit. Everyone enjoyed the western. This film is quite the opposite. Tarantino has never been someone who shies away from controversy, but this film is no exception. I mean, the entire basis of the film is that it's a western black comedy about slavery. To this day, it holds the record for the most N-words used in a single film. It can be said that the film is creative in its ability to place western sensibilities in a southern setting. However, its divergence from the mainstream, especially from mainstream westerns, goes much deeper. Comedy has been put in the western before. Ultra-violence has been put in the western before. Westerns have even had black leads before. However, when it's placed all together with Tarantino's fast and loud dialogue style, it makes for a combination that brings out something entirely new from the genre. Successful westerns that come today, so-called neo-western, needs to go above and beyond to feel fresh. And with this amazing mix of eclectic characters and controversial narrative, Django just does just Westerns have certainly been overdone. However, it is obvious that there is more to be said about the Wild West than the stories of sheriffs and outlaws or cowboys and Indians. Films like Unforgiven, The Ballad of Scruggs, and Django help to reform what a Western can and should be, while keeping one of Hollywood's oldest formats alive.